What's going on, bottom line viewers? Sean Payton has found a home. He is back in the NFL, and I couldn't be more excited because I'm a big Sean Payton fan. He's one of my favorite coaches of all time. I think he comes back to the NFL hungry, ready to go with a new opportunity, and Sean Payton is the type of coach that I believe really loves this opportunity to build an organization from the ground up. Sean Payton with the Denver Broncos will be given the opportunity to be the hero, to be the savior of Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos. Last year was an absolute disaster for the Denver Broncos. It couldn't have gone worse for that franchise. Now Sean Payton has the opportunity to build upon his legacy and to get Russell Wilson to play better or to get the Broncos back to some successful football. Either way, he's going to do his best. In my opinion, Sean Payton has been one of the best coaches in the NFL since 2006 with the New Orleans Saints, where he immediately entered that door. They brought in Drew Brees, they drafted Reggie Bush, and they went to the NFC Championship game. Not too long after that, they won the Super Bowl, and not too long after that, they were going to NFC Championship games and having success, continually going to the playoffs. He, in my opinion, is one of the best quarterback minds, one of the best offensive minds of this past generation and of all time. And if there's any coach that was available on the market that could potentially turn around Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos investment in Russell Wilson in Denver, it is this man. It is Sean Payton. It has to be Sean Payton. And that's why I made a video earlier this offseason talking about you gotta back up the big money truck. You gotta put it in front of Sean Payton's house. And you gotta say, here is everything you need to make this work. Because this was the man that the Denver Broncos needed to get. They needed to get Sean Payton. And they got him in the building. Now, the compensation for this trade with the New Orleans Saints, because of course this did not come just simply via contract as a free agent. This deal was made with the Saints for a 2023, this year, first round pick, and a next year, second round pick to the New Orleans Saints. We'll talk about what the Saints get out of this and how this is also great for the Saints. For Sean Payton and a third round pick. If you have any questions about this move and you're live, make sure to hit me up in the comment section and let me know your questions about this trade. If you're watching this after the fact, don't forget to let me know what you think, how you feel about this deal for Sean Payton. If you're a Saints fan, let me know. If you're a Broncos fan, let me know in the comment section below. But let's continue talking about Sean Payton. Don't forget to Gronk spike the like button. Man, I'm intrigued to see what Sean Payton can do with the Denver Broncos. Obviously, he enters a tough situation. He has to make Russell Wilson work. Now, what I do believe Sean Payton does well is he figures out what the quarterback does well. And Sean Payton, as a former quarterback himself, understands that position. Understands what makes these players tick. But I think more importantly than putting the quarterback in a great situation to succeed, I think Sean Payton is going to bring an adult, a leader, a presence to the Denver Broncos that I didn't feel they had last year. I felt like they allowed Russell Wilson to be, quite frankly, a bit of a brat, to kind of act how he wanted to. And they treated Russell Wilson as a special student. They treated him as really the star of the show, unlike everybody else on the roster. And they gave him special treatment. And I think Sean Payton's going to come in there. And I think he's going to treat Russell Wilson like he has something to prove. And although he's going to try to be a great mentor to him and help him play well, I think it's going to be different than last year. I don't see Sean Payton going in there and being buddy-buddy with Russell Wilson. I think he's going to try to be what he needs to be, which I think is a bit of a tough teacher. And I think he's going to be able to have the presence, the command, and the respect of Russell Wilson to say, hey, man, you sucked last year. He's going to look him square in the face and say, you were not very good at the quarterback position for this team last year. And if Russell Wilson is able to put his ego aside, and I believe he'll be able to because of the respect he has for Sean Payton. We know these guys have kind of a little bit of a relationship. I think he has enough respect there where I think that they can make that work. Where Russ is going to have to go back to square one, and they're going to build upon what he was able to do in Seattle. And although, some people will say Russell Wilson is washed, I think we've seen enough from him last year to say that he still has something left. I'm not saying that this is prime Russell Wilson, 2015, 2016, 2017 Russell Wilson. But I do believe that the Broncos with Russell Wilson still have something there. And the other thing I will say is that Drew Brees was a shorter quarterback, right? In New Orleans, and Sean Payton was able to kind of craft and manufacture an offense around him even when Drew Brees was washed near the end. And Russell and Drew are different players, and they're different quarterbacks, and Russ is always more about the vertical downfield element of the game, and it always felt like Drew Brees was more of a short, intermediate passer. But I do think you can draw some similarities there with how they function within the pocket. And I do feel that at least Sean Payton has that previous experience of being with a quarterback that's a little bit smaller in stature, right? He's not a guy that's 6'5", 6'6". He's had Drew Brees, who's about 6 foot, 6'1". Russell Wilson is about 5'11", I believe, 6 foot. So both of these guys have at times, Russell Wilson struggled to see over the middle of the field. That's why he's always kind of running around and trying to move outside the pocket and create plays out of structure, because sometimes he just doesn't see things clearly down the middle of the field. So that's something you're going to have to get that funk out of Russell Wilson. If anybody can, it's Sean Payton. And I think more importantly than anything that has to do with Russell Wilson as a player independent, I think this scheme is going to change dramatically in terms of what they deem to be important to this team. I think Sean Payton is instantly going to bring in a power running game. I think when Russell Wilson was most successful, he was able to benefit off of a strong offensive line that could play power run, and then Russell Wilson could benefit off of that, right? He could draw off of play action. He could be able to be that big time playmaker, right? And when you get that run game going and you're able to pull off play action and you get Russell Wilson outside the pocket and you get Russell Wilson on the move and you get Russell Wilson looking vertically off of to those crossers, to the downfield post concepts, the goes and all that stuff, the back shoulders, that's when Russell Wilson is at his best. Now, Russell can't move as well as he used to, but that power run is something that was missing from Denver last year. And Sean Payton had a lot of success with that in New Orleans near the end of Drew Brees' career. With Mark Ingram, with Alvin Kamara. They had a 1-2 punch at running back, and that was kind of the base of the offense, and then they kind of went from there, right? So I feel like there's going to be an element where the Broncos focus their offensive attack through the running game, and the quarterback is able to benefit from that. And I think that's where Sean Payton is going to go. So they're going to have to work on the offensive line, I think, a little bit. Not to say it's terrible, but I think they could use some improvement there. I think they're going to have to bring in another running back alongside Javonte Williams, possibly from the draft. They don't have that first-round pick. They've got pretty solid receivers. We'll see what they do with Jerry Jeudy moving forward, but I do feel they could use some speed at the receiver position. Defensively, they're already pretty good. They've got a pretty good roster defensively. They were a pretty good defense last year. I do think that obviously they lost Chubb, but overall they're a pretty good roster. I'm not saying they're great, but I think they're a pretty good roster. I think they can get some things going in this team next year. I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs. I still would probably rank them near the bottom of the division. But you would be amazed what coaching can do. You saw what the New York Giants were able to do. The New York Giants went from arguably the worst coaching staff in the NFL to a very good coaching staff and went from one of the worst teams in the NFL to one of the better teams in the NFC in a year. Really, where they didn't turn over a lot of talent. It was simply, okay, let's take this talent and what can we do better here? What can we improve? What can we manufacture through our scheme, through our coaching? And I think there could be big improvements coming from Denver from the coaching perspective, especially when it comes to offense. I mean, defense, they were already pretty good last year. It's more about the offense. They were a dreadful offense. And I just can't see Sean Payton, if Russell Wilson is washed or not, I can't see him having a bad offense. It just doesn't happen when it comes to Sean Payton. It's at least going to be above the below tier. So you're at least going to get an improvement from that perspective. Now, was this trade worth it? I think it was worth the shot. I think we're going to find out pretty quickly whether or not Russell Wilson can still play. And if he can't still play, then they're going to be able to move off of him soon enough. It's not going to be next year, but soon enough they're going to be able to decide. And I think having this guy in your building is huge for culture, for building the future of this franchise, for having coach. I mean, this is one of the greatest coaches of all time, in my opinion. So you're going to bring this guy in there, and he's going to be able to build this culture up for this new ownership. The ownership seems to be very good about giving him the power. And I feel like Sean Payton's going to have a majority of the power when it comes to the decisions of the roster and the trades, the free agents, all that sort of stuff. Not to say GM won't have any influence at all, but I do feel Sean Payton will be making most of the decisions there. I think that's pretty well understood. Now, in terms of the New Orleans Saints, I like the trade. Obviously, you can't really go wrong here because Sean Payton wasn't going to be coming back to the New Orleans Saints. That wasn't going to happen. So, understanding that, you get more ammo. You get ammunition to find a quarterback, to build this roster, to rebuild a team that is old, that is not exactly going anywhere anytime soon, and you have the chance to kind of reshape this team as you see fit. I'm not sure if Dennis Allen will be the coach very long. I don't think so, honestly. He's kind of a bridge coach to me. I think he's a very good defensive coordinator. Kind of struggles to be a head coach. But they can try to move up and find a quarterback this year. They can use both their first-round picks to find foundational players on defense, on offense, if they like. Offensive line, wide receiver, defensive line. They could use more pass rushers. Cameron Jordan's getting old. Demario Davis getting old at linebacker. So they're definitely getting old in key positions. Don't know what's going on with Michael Thomas. Obviously, you have Chris Olave, but Alvin Kamara's getting older. So they've got answers with these picks, and I feel like that's where they needed to go. Because really, when you look at the Saints, they've been in cap hell for so long. They've been put in such a difficult position with how they've been putting off their cap situation for so long that they needed these picks to come in to get cheaper players and to get youth in the building. So that's big. I don't think they'll go all in for a quarterback in this draft. I could be wrong about that, but we'll see. Who knows? But all we know is that they have ammunition, they have opportunity, right? With more picks comes more availability and more options to do what you want with this roster. And we'll see what they do. But I think it's a win for the Saints. I think it's a win for the Broncos. Because at the end of the day, you're getting the best possible candidate that you could possibly get. And I don't care that it costs a first-round pick and a future second. We've seen coaches be traded, go to other teams, and have success. We saw Bill Belichick get traded from the Jets to the Patriots. Boom. We saw John Gruden get traded from the Raiders to the Bucks. Boom. It feels like every time this happens, it works out. Now, in those situations, I would say actually Belichick did have to get out from under the Drew Bledsoe deal because Drew Bledsoe was regressing at that point because he was paid before Belichick was there. So that I guess that is sort of similar. Obviously, John Gruden didn't have that situation, but it does feel like coaches are worth it. And as we saw this year, Was there ever a bigger example of the NFL really being more about coaching than any other year that we've seen in recent history? I mean, you look at what Kyle Shanahan was able to do with 4 different quarterbacks. You see what Brian Daboll was able to do. You see what Mike McDaniel was able to do and manufacture from Tua in Miami. I mean, across the board, AFC, NFC, Mike Tomlin with the Steelers and Kenny Pickett. I mean, coaching was so huge this year. So to go all in on coaching is just as big, if not more important, than going after a quarterback, because the coach, especially one that's this good and this experienced, there's only so few guys that actually understand how to build a franchise, build a culture from the ground up. And Sean Payton is one of those very few people that actually understands how to win at the NFL level and how you need to have cohesion from your owner to your coach to your general manager to your quarterback. And put the Russell Wilson thing aside, because I think Sean Payton will be there even if Russell Wilson doesn't work out. Does he have an opportunity to save him? I believe he does. But if it doesn't work, okay, whatever. We move forward. We've got a guy, we've got a culture, we've got a coach. That's all we need. Now we move forward, right? So I think it's a win-win either way, honestly. Starting to take some of your guys' questions. Appreciate everybody joining the chat, by the way. Thank you guys so much. Don't forget to Gronk spike the like button. If you're new, a Broncos fan, a Saints fan, let me know your question in the comments. Gronk spike the like button. As I think of things, guys, this is just off the top of the dome. This is just raw reaction. This is just what's coming from me right now. So as I think of things, I'll continue to talk about it. But bring your questions. I will answer them. What's going on, Big Al? How you doing, man? Freeway says, if we bring back Fangio Super Bowl, I guess there is the opportunity to bring back Fangio, because Sean Payton was definitely talking about having Fangio. But I will say, I did really like what they did defensively this past year. Defense was not the issue. I don't think defensive coaching was the issue whatsoever. I do think Fangio is going to go to San Francisco, but we will see what happens. Continuing, Reek Gotti says, I invested so much in Russell Wilson. They had to do that. Yes, I agree, man. There comes a time where you have to go all in. You have to make the move that you must make. And if you're looking at the coaching landscape, the guys that were available, there was no other answer for the Denver Broncos other than Sean Payton. Unless you were going to try to trade 18 first-round picks for Kyle Shanahan, or try to trade for, Sean McVay or something of that nature, you weren't going to get anybody as qualified to help Russell Wilson, because you needed an offensive coach. You need somebody that understands the quarterback position. And guys, there's only so many people that understand quarterback, right? I'm not so sure that guys like Bill Belichick actually understand the quarterback position the way that guys like Sean Payton understand quarterback. There's only so many people that understand how to fix a quarterback, okay? And he is one of those people. I think that both teams win this trade. Connor McLeod says that he doesn't care what anyone says. The Saints win it. Now, history would suggest that the Denver Broncos will win this trade. History suggests that. But every situation is different. And ultimately, we do not know who the Saints will pick with these picks. They could pick the next Drew Brees. They could. But maybe they don't. Maybe they don't. Maybe they pick the next Jameis Winston. We don't know. Okay? So, at the end of the day, picks are definitely a huge question mark. I think that culture, I think that coaching is huge. There's definitely a question to be asked. Does Sean Payton still have it? Because the last year we saw of Sean Payton was not exactly the best. Now, I would say you look at what Sean Payton was able to do last year with the quarterback position of Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston and that roster that he had. And then you look at what the Saints were able to do this year, and you would definitely say, well, there was a big regression, because a lot of people felt like the Saints roster this past year was better than the Saints roster the year that Sean Payton, his final year, right? That was the year post Drew Brees, 2021. And Sean Payton was still able to kind of scratch together some wins. I still think only 1 year removed, he's definitely had some time to recover mentally, to rest up, to think about some things he would do better, to change. Definitely had time to go over the landscape of the NFL and figure out what he wants to take from certain coaches that have been successful. You know, he could definitely look at what the game is doing in college, what the game's doing in the NFL, and that's definitely beneficial having an off year or two, right? We saw even a guy like Mike McCarthy, who's nowhere near the coach that Sean Payton is, become a better coach after having a year or two off because he simply was able to have that grand scope of, okay, well, this is what the NFL is right now. And he's not too far removed, like somebody like John Gruden, where John Gruden was years removed from the NFL. I felt like he was like 5 or 6 years removed from the NFL. So that's huge. Freeway says, killed this trade both ways. Broncos don't need picks because we already have a built team. We just need to structure. And the Saints just need to build through the draft. They definitely need to build through the draft. Kevel is in the chat. How long does Sean and Russell have? That's a good question. I would say we will know what the plan will be this year. I think Sean has a lot of time because I think Sean is going to be there guaranteed post Russell Wilson, in my opinion. And I don't think he would sign up for anything less because I think he would go into those meetings saying, hey, if you want me, I'm not going to be fired because Russell Wilson doesn't work out. Because for all I know, Russell Wilson just can't play anymore. I guarantee you that was the discussion. I don't think Sean Payton signed up to be the Broncos coach without that acknowledgement. Now, on the other hand, how long does Russ have? I think he has 1 year. I think he has this year to prove, Russ, can you still play? I'm not saying he's going to be a top 10 quarterback, but if he's one of those quarterbacks in the middle tier that you can win with, maybe he's not special, but you can win with him in the right system, in the right scenario, I think they'll continue to ride with Russell Wilson. They'll let it ride, so to speak. So I think that's the answer. How close are they to Kansas City? I don't know, honestly. I feel like they have a pretty good team, pretty good roster, but I don't think it's great. I feel like it's entirely dependent for me on, like, how bad was Hackett? Like, how bad were the Broncos from a coaching standpoint these last couple of years? I do think that generally their roster is a bit overrated. But if Denver were to finish with 9-10 wins next year and make the playoffs as a wild card team, I wouldn't be shocked. Again, we saw a New York Giants team that had next to no talent make the playoffs in a tough division. So I don't think it's impossible to say that he can turn this around in a season. But I think more realistically, you would have to say, yeah, you improve this year, but maybe you make it, maybe you don't. That's all dependent on how much they can get out of Russell Wilson. And that's the ultimate wild card. How close are they to Kansas City? I ultimately don't think that matters that much because I don't think winning the division is all that big of a deal anymore. I feel like if you make the dance and make the playoffs, you go from there. Because there's only one bye at the end of the day. Only one team gets the bye. Right? So, sure, your division matters, but you're still going to look at Kansas City as the favorite. Denver's not expected to compete with Kansas City next year. They're just expected to be better. They're expected to improve. And they're expected to possibly make the playoffs. That would be the realistic expectation for my standpoint. How close are they to the Chargers? I honestly think they're right there with the Chargers. As of right now, I'd say they're right there with the Chargers. Because I don't trust Brandon Staley and I don't trust Kellen Moore. And I don't trust the Chargers. I think the Chargers have more high-end talent. I think the Chargers have a better quarterback. But I also feel like the Chargers consistently mismanage their situation. So, I don't know. We'll have to see what the Chargers do in the offseason. Dylan is a happy Broncos fan. That's nice to hear. Yeah, guys, I think if I were to rank head coaches right now, I would put Sean Payton in the top 5. I know he didn't coach this year. I would put him in the top 5 if I had to, honestly. So, yeah, man. What else do I have to say about this? I'm excited that Sean Payton's back. We'll see what he does with the defensive side of the football. From a Saints perspective, I think the future is bright. The future is bright. I think Saints fans should be excited. I think the Saints fans should be intrigued with what they're going to do this offseason, what they're going to do at the quarterback position. I wouldn't expect, if you're a Saints fan, to be competitive this year, but I think this year you're finally seeing the post-Drew Brees, Sean Payton era begin. Because I think the last 2 years were sort of bridge years where the franchise felt that they had enough talent to still compete at a relatively high level. This year, I feel like they're officially starting over, starting from scratch and refreshing. And I think that's good for Saints fans. You know, because as a Patriots fan, I can somewhat relate to you guys because you had the Drew Brees, Sean Payton era. We had the Brady, Belichick era. And we kind of had that 1 year of 2020 with Cam Newton to kind of like reset. And you guys have seemingly had 2 years. So I think you guys are resetting now. Is it out of the question the Saints compete for the division next year? No, because the division is so bad. But I feel like that is like a cherry on top. Like if you guys are competitive this next season, that's like a cherry on top. That's not essential. If I'm a Saints fan, I'm saying, if we win, that's cool. But I'm not necessarily like, yeah, we got to win because we have this great roster. You know what I mean? So it's definitely a mindset shift for Saints fans because they went from we're in every year, like we're competitive every year, to, okay, now we're kind of like resetting. So you're saying the AFC West has 2 coaches in the top 5? Yes. I would say the top 5 coaches in the NFL, off the top of the head, with no real thought at all, is those 2 guys, Shanahan, Belichick, and the 5th spot can be a toss-up through a lot of different guys. You might put Mike Tomlin there. You might put McVay there. You might put Vrabel there. You might put Carroll there. You might put Harbaugh. I mean, there's a lot of different guys you could put at 5, but I think those are kind of the main core guys, top 4 or 5 in my opinion. Big Al says, even with Peyton, Denver ain't on Kansas City's level. Yeah, I don't think they're expected to be on Kansas City's level. Obviously, we'll see what they do this offseason. And the ultimate wild card is Russell Wilson. I mean, who knows? Maybe Russell Wilson is Russell Wilson again next year, and all of a sudden they're super competitive like we thought they would be this year. Or at least I didn't think they would be that great this year. Like, I was kind of lower on them compared to other people. Like, some people were like, oh, they're going to be the number 1 seed in the AFC. I didn't even have them making the playoffs. So I kind of saw somewhat what happened this year because I saw a little bit of regression from Russell Wilson last year in Seattle. But I definitely feel like they're going to be better than last year. And I feel like they're going to be trending forward. And at the very least, they're going to have a mature, experienced coach who can bring a revamped, revitalized culture to this building. Players are going to believe in him. Players are going to play for him. And we'll see what we get from quarterback. That's really what it's going to be about. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to Gronk spike the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. It's Mitch. Thank you so much for watching. And we will see you in the future reaction videos for the rest of the 2023 NFL offseason. I'm excited. I'm pumped. Plus, it's Super Bowl week. So let's go. Peace!